Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Eileen, are you going to start the intro?
Yes. Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Give it another minute just as people are joining us. We have a couple
Okay.
folks joining us. Alrighty. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to SBIR Overview, How to Leverage America's Seed Fund. I'm Eileen Villa Golden from the Maricopa SBDC, and I will be the facilitator for this webinar. I will be monitoring the chat throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, make sure to put them in the Q&A so that they do not get lost in the chat. As everyone is joining us, would you mind introducing yourselves in the chat? Now we will be having our wonderful business analyst, Lou Farina, give an overview of the SBDC.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining. Welcome to our webinar this morning. As Eileen mentioned, we're going to talk about SBIRs and how to access that program. We've got a couple of really interesting guest speakers who are going to participate, and I'll tell you about them in a little bit. But just to kick things off a little bit before I talk about the SBDC, fundraising can be extremely challenging. I think we all know that. Anybody who's tried early stage, especially if you're in the technical side of things, you have a technical startup, getting early stage seed funding is really a hard thing to do. It can be done, but the SBIR STTR program through the federal government is really a very unique and interesting program that provides some seed funding for early stage innovative companies. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And the topics for today, we're going to talk about startup capital landscape, and that's me just telling you a little bit how it fits into the early stage funding cycle. Then Bob is going to talk about the SBIR STTR program and the PTAC organization. Then Kyle is going to talk about the ACA FAST Grant, the state initiatives. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the commercialization plan, which is really kind of an important part of the SBIR. And then we're going to talk about available resources. So that's kind of the program for today. As Eileen mentioned, you could put your questions in the chat, and we'll interject them as necessary, as appropriate. So this is me. I don't know, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a business analyst here at the SBDC. I've been here about 3 years. I specialize in technology commercialization, so I typically get the early stage technology companies that come through the SBDC. My background is in corporate ventures, M&A for Fortune 50 firms on a global basis. I've done angel investing here in town, consulting, and I work with the SBDC now, as I mentioned, for 3 years. And also I am a reviewer for the NSF, so I do review proposals. Of course, if I have to recuse myself if I have any contact with anybody whose proposal I'm asked to review. So anyway, that's me. I'm going to introduce Bob Mucci. Also, he's on the line right now. He's with AZ PTAC. He works for PTAC, which is our really specialist group for government contracting. He's got a lot of experience in SBIRs, and he's a really good resource here in the state. Also, we're going to have Kyle Hohmann from the ACA, and the ACA has secured a FAST grant through the SBA this year, and I think for next year. And there's some great resources and initiatives that are available to our state participants, and Kyle's going to tell you more about that. So that's the program for today. I can give you the SBDC commercial real quick. We're part of the America's SBDC network. We are a federally funded, partially federally funded program. We're not the government we're funded partially by the SBA as a grant, comes through the Maricopa Community College District, who also matches our funds at the state level. So there's a state component to it. We have a relationship with the ACA, and there's some funding mechanisms there, as well as the city of Peoria. So we've got different funders, but we're all on the same page with regard to economic impact and economic development. We do a lot of different things here from a subject matter perspective. We at the top of the list, and I keep telling people I'm going to change this slide because we did a lot of disaster loan assistance last 2 years. Before the pandemic, that wasn't even on our slide deck, but that's kind of sunsetting now, as many people know, with the programs kind of expiring, PPP and idle, et cetera. What we do, a lot of lender readiness in general, like for commercial SBA loans, for commercial loans. So we've got ex-bankers who are able to work with our clients to help prep them for bankable clients who are looking for expansion capital or working capital, or to buy a building for their existing business. We've got marketing, we've got some expertise there. We've got some expertise in buying and selling businesses. Technology commercialization is me. Export international trade, and then government contracting through our partner organization, PTAC, and Bob will tell you more about that. The way we work with clients one-on-one counseling. We call it counseling. It's advising. And so it's a long-term relationship. We meet with our clients individually, and there's no issue with intellectual property because we're covered from a non-disclosure perspective. And so we get to know our clients and work with them through all stages of the business cycle, from the beginning, starting, even pre-ventures, all the way through exits, growth phase, et cetera. There's a training component. These webinars count as our training component. We used to do them in person called workshops. Now we do them online called webinars. And at some point, we'll probably go back to doing them in person or hybrid. So I look forward to that. And then there's resources, there's tools that we are able to provide. These are commercial tools. They're fee-based tools, but we contract with the providers to provide them for no fee for our clients. And I should go back and also mention that my services, as the SBDC services, are no fee, also prepaid by your tax dollars. So these resources, there are things like Live Plan, which is a business planning tool. We've got market research reports through iBiz. There's a whole host of things that we can help with. So anyway, that's the SBDC. You want to, if you need to talk to a counselor, go through www.maricopa-sbdc.com, request counseling, and you'll get routed to a counselor. Okay, I'm going to skip that. First topic for today is just talking about startup capital. And there's typically two ways to acquire capital early. You can either do debt, which is the bank, and you promise to pay it back at a certain interest rate. And there may be some collateral involved that secures your loan, or there's equity typically. And equity is an investor. An investor will come in and they will buy a piece of your business, and they are looking to increase their stock or their valuation and make some money as you grow. Now, there's a third piece also, which are grants. And typically I tell a lot of the folks who come to the SBDC that it's really difficult to start your business on grant money. On the whole, there's not a lot of free money to start businesses. It's just not the way we're organized here, or the way our system works in the US. But there are grants that can help. And we saw a bunch of them during the Rescue Act, but more traditionally, this SBIR program for early stage innovative companies is a good grant program. It's a really excellent program. So with regard to startup capital, anybody who's trying to start a business, that first injection is the trickiest and the most difficult. It seems like nobody wants to be the first in. There's stiff competition for limited sources of financing. So even for grants, for early stage angel investing, it is really, you got to be really good to be successful. And we all hear the stories about, the entrepreneur who walked into a coffee shop with one slide and met a couple of folks and was funded for $9 million to do their, I don't know, their cat bar or whatever it is. And so that can happen. It happens, but that's really kind of the one-off. If you've been a successful entrepreneur and you've had what we call successful exits, which is you creating value for your investors, it's a lot easier to get money because you've got a network and you've also got track record. So that's really the easy money for most of us who start, and it's the first time we get to do this, and maybe the only time. It's a lot more difficult. With regard to debt, I just want to mention it a little bit. Lenders are really risk averse. So if you're an early stage company, you don't have a lot of collateral, it's really difficult for banks to loan on if you don't have a financial track record. You'll see some advertisements for startup loans, but there's a lot of different things that go into that startup loan. They like to have a financial track record, but also your experience. There's usually a cash down payment required, 20 or 30%. How mature is your product? Are you ready to go to market? Personal credit, collateral. Do you have anything that, you have a house? Do you have a 401k? Do you have something you can put up? Do you have a business plan? How good is your business plan? Can you tell me the story? Do you know your business? And then, bankers have industry, they have portfolios. And so and the portfolio is an aggregation of different type of companies and different industries. And they like to have their portfolio balanced in certain ways. And so at any particular time, they may have an appetite for a certain industry sector and an appetite for not certain industry sector, and it depends. So, but just the message here is startup debt when you're early, especially you're really risky. Bankers, I tend not to want to play in this time in your company. So but with an equity investment, if you look at equity, there's yourself. You're typically the first person to invest, and we always joke, who's the second person to invest? It's usually yourself. And then in the pre-seed, after you've got some investment, you've done some work, you're looking for additional investment, there's your friends and family around, you've got some public sources, maybe like the ACA accelerator. You've got crowdfunding opportunities, you've got accelerators per se, and then there's grants, there's SBIRs, and so this grant here, a couple of these maybe aren't on the equity side. They're non-debt, because with the SBIR, and Bob will talk, it's non-dilutive. So there's no equity taken from the government, which is really a great benefit to this program. And then after you've gotten through yourself and then these other sources and you've got some traction, you could start to talk to an angel investor. That's when they'll talk to you. Having an SBIR is a good thing for you. If you have it, I'll talk to you more about that. After angel investors or strategic investors, then you can maybe talk to corporate venture, then venture capital, and then maybe IPO private equity. But as you get down the line here, corporate venture capital, I mean, they're looking at big investments. They can't justify anything less than 5 million, and they're looking really, in chunks of 10 to 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars. So, and you got to need it, right? So that's kind of the way things go. And the thing in the scheme of things, the SBIR grants, the amount of money you can get this early for your innovation is really, really unique, and it makes it very attractive. So we'll talk about that. Why do investors like SBIRs? Okay, so again, it's an early capital injection. So when you get capital injected early, it means that it de-risks your investment. Okay, early on. It's non-dilutive. I mentioned that. Non-dilutive means there's no ownership taken. The government they're not investors. It's a grant. Okay. So there's a certain level of validation that comes with it. If you win an SBIR phase 1 or phase 2, there's some scientific vetting. And as I mentioned, I help with the NSF. So you get some experts to look at your science. And then there's commercialization component, and it's got to pass the bar for commercialization, which means, are you going to make this a business, or how can you make this a business? You got to be thinking along those lines. And that's really good. I mean, so, you go through the NSF or the NIH or DoD and their panelists who are usually outside folks, out industry and academia. They vet you and then they'll help make a recommendation. The program manager usually makes the recommendation on the award. But however, I will say that simply receiving an SBIR grant doesn't mean the company is a good investment. So I will preface that by saying you can get SBIRs. It does not mean that, private money is going to just rain down on you when you're done. Okay. So it is a component, it is a nice component, but it's not the end. It's kind of a means. So with that, Eileen, I'm going to hand this over to Bob Mucci from PTAC, who I mentioned before. He's got great expertise in SBIRs here in the state, and he's going to talk about the SBIR program. So Eileen, could you hand this over to Bob?
Yes, Bob, you are now a host.
Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to get out of loose slides and get into my slides. So can you go ahead and show me how to do that or get me there?
Mm-hmm. Hang on, I'm going to stop. I'm going to
Stop
sharing.
sharing.
I'm going to stop sharing. How's that?
That's perfect. And what we'll do here is go here. We're going to do a share and from the beginning. Okay, can you go ahead and see my slides now?
We can.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about SBIRs. We're actually going to talk in depth about SBIRs. And one of the things that you have to understand is that there are a lot of SBIR opportunities that are out there. One of the first places, if you're thinking about an SBIR, is to go to the www.sbir.gov website. Okay, and Blue, are you seeing my whole screen, or are you seeing just the slide portions?
I'm seeing the whole screen, Bob. If you go and do like
Okay.
I think a slide sorter or
there we go.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. So the SBIRs are actually, the overall administration of SBIRs is by the SBA. And the website that you want to go to is this website to start giving yourself a bit of a tutorial about SBIRs, because SBIRs can be really very complex, and you really need to understand what an SBIR and an STTR, which I'm going to talk about in a second, are. So we have SBIRs and we have STTRs. Two of them are similar, but there are some really fundamental differences. SBIRs are small business innovative research grants. Okay, that's an SBIR. They stimulate technology and innovation by investing in research and development. And they may or may not require a business to be involved with an institution of higher education. You can have an institute of higher education involved, but usually it's not required in an SBIR. And SBIRs tend to be agency specific, and I'm going to explain what that means in a second. STTRs are small business technology transfer grants. There are far fewer STTRs than there are SBIRs, and they tend to be for a little bit less money. The awards are made to businesses that pursue technology innovation through cooperative research with a nonprofit scientific and educational research institution. And there are specific requirements in STTRs for the amount of work that the educational research institution is required to do. Now, one of the things that you have to understand about SBIRs and STTRs is that they tend to be topic specific by the sponsoring agency. And what I mean by that is that you may have the greatest invention in the world, but there may not be a topic out there that that agency wants, for you to apply for. So you have to really spend a lot of time doing your research. And and research can be through solicitations that can be by NIH, by DoD, by USDA, by whatever agency is putting out, an SBIR. And solicitations can be found in a variety of places. They can be found on SAM, which is the System for Award Management, and they can be found on grants.gov. Those are two specific areas where you should look for, the potential for an opportunity for you. Now, the Department of Defense does what they call broad agency announcements, BAAs. And usually BAAs can be found on SAM or on a website called DSIP. As a general rule, I look at the DSIP website for the BAA announcements before I look at SAM. There are places where there are open topics, and we're going to talk about that in a second, about the difference between topic-specific and open topics. And they can be found usually on grants.gov, they can be found on DSIP, they can be found on SAM. So there's a variety of places that you should look for opportunities for you to apply for an SBIR or an STTR. SBIRs and STTRs. Well, like I said here, and like the slide shows you, there's a virtual cornucopia of agencies that offer SBIRs and STTRs, and it varies from solicitation periods to solicitation periods. It should also not surprise anybody that the largest amount of SBIRs and STTRs are through the Department of Defense. And I do a lot of DoD counseling. The last time I looked, 53% of the SBIRs and STTRs that were awarded in the state of Arizona were from the Department of Defense. The other two agencies that offer a large amount of SBIRs are National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Health. Requests for SBIR applications can be problem or topic specific or broad in nature, and it depends on the agency and their requirements. When I say topic specific, I sort of throw out, something that I made up for like DoD, where DoD says, we want to, find somebody that can give us technology to hit the head of a pin with an artillery shell 1,000 miles away. I mean, that would be like a specific topic. Right now, DoD has a lot of specific topics out there that deal with hypersonic flight. And they're looking at ways, technology, and products that will solve issues with hypersonic flight. There are certain areas and certain agencies that do not have topic-specific SBIRs. One of those is the National Science Foundation, NSF. NSF has topic areas that are listed on this slide, and under those topic areas, they have subtopic areas. So, what they're looking for is they're looking for certain technologies that might be medical devices. And under medical devices, they'll have subtopic areas. They're looking for certain topics that deal with artificial intelligence, chemical technology, biomedical technology. So while these are topics, and while they have subtopics, there's a lot more latitude with NSF as opposed to DoD that is specifically topic related. And, if you apply to NSF, you really need to do your research in what broad topic area you want to apply for and what subtopics are listed under those broad topic areas. The application process for National Science Foundation is really very, very specific. You have to turn in a project pitch letter to the project manager for the topic area that you are going to apply for. And then what they're going to do is they're going to review your project pitch letter. And if they like it, they're going to extend to you an invitation for a full application. And I could spend an entire webinar on how to apply for NSF, but that's not the point today. But it's a specific area that you apply to in a specific way that you apply to that area. Another area that looks for open topics is the Air Force, and they have AFW-ERX. their AFWorks website. And the thing about the Air Force is that they came to the realization that there were people out there and agencies out there and entities out there that might have interesting technology that would be useful for the Air Force, but not specific to a specific topic that they're looking for. So they basically said, show us what you got. Interested in taking a look at what, your particular technology might have and how it can be useful for the Air Force. And again, with the Air Force, they have their own specific way of applying. And what you do is you do a project pitch to the Air Force. And if they like your project pitch, they'll give you a phase 1 award, which is really small dollars, $50,000. And the whole point of that is for you to then go out and find somebody in the Air Force that's going to sign a memorandum of understanding that they like what you're doing and they want to work with you. So again, they have their own way of applying. Now, the other thing is NASA, the space agency, has just recently come up with a similar program that's an open topic area where they're saying, again, show us what you got. Do you have something that, might be useful for NASA? And at the same time, is it something that might have dual use? Dual use is a common word in SBIRs where, that you can apply to DoD for an SBIR. They award you a contract. DoD will probably be your primary customer, but does it have a dual use in the commercial world? Very important. Dual use is a real important concept for you to understand in your SBIR application. So how do you apply? Well, the thing about applying for an SBIR is that there is absolutely no commonality between certain agencies. A lot of agencies, the way you apply for your SBIR is through grants.gov. You're going to get logged into grants.gov. You're going to create, a password. You're going to create, a user ID. All of the forms that you're going to fill out are on grants.gov, and that is actually the vehicle that you're going to use for your SBIR application, depending upon the agency that you're applying to. The Department of Defense, you're going to go through the DSIP portal, entirely different from grants.gov. And, you really need to know how to use that DSIP portal. National Science Foundation uses FastLine. Again, completely different from grants.gov, completely different from the DSIP portal. Every single one of these, application portals has their own nuance. And it's real important that you understand how those application portals work. Time and tide. I put this slide up because it is really critical that you start looking at an application well in advance of the due date. The average time to draft a proposal is anywhere between 200 to 300 hours. And I've even seen, some entities that have said 300 to 400 hours. Now, I do a lot of counseling work for SBIRs. And if you're going to come to me the week before the SBIR is due and say, can you tell me how to start? I'm going to tell you no. You're starting way too late. And the chances of you getting, your SBIR done in time is virtually impossible. The other warning I'm going to give you is due dates are closer than they appear. SBIRs have due dates, not only a due date, but a due time. And if you miss that due time, usually as a rule, you will not get accepted by the agency to review your SBIRs. Although Lou and I both had a client that missed the due date by a small amount of time, and the program administrator allowed them some extra time to get their, SBIR application in, which is kind of surprising to me because usually, due dates are sacrosanct. It's set in stone that you have to have your SBIR application in on a certain date by a certain time. And you got to remember, the time is East Coast time, not our time. So that's also really very, very important, that you look at the due date and that you start well enough in advance. Now let's talk a little bit about how you go about filling in or applying for a solicitation. I always tell my clients, read the solicitation. And then when you're done, read the solicitation again. And then when you're done, read it a third time. And when you're done reading it a third time, print it out. Solicitations are really very complex, and you really need to sit down and read a solicitation. I tell clients, do it with a yellow magic marker and highlight the important points so that you do not, miss something that's important in your solicitation, because the devil is in the details. One of the things that I often see, particularly from people who are really good at R&D and they have a lot, they have a lot of technology experience, is they're really good at writing their technical description, and they totally miss other important parts of an application. They don't put together a good commercialization piece. They miss that there needs to be a cover letter in there. They don't know how to put together a budget, because you're going to have to put together a budget and budget documents and budget justification. So every single part of a solicitation is important. One of the things that's really critical is in a solicitation, they will give you keywords. Those are breadcrumbs. And when I read a client's draft, and I usually ask them to send me a draft, what I actually do is take the keywords and I do a keyword search to see how many times you use the keyword in your application. And if the keywords aren't there, I tell my clients, go back and put those keywords in. Because a lot of times the reviewer is going to do a keyword search. They're going to see how many times you use the specific keywords. The other thing is that you'll see usually in the application solicitation that there are references for the technology that the particular agency is looking for. Go look at those references. Look those references up. Use them, in your application. There's a reason why they are there. The other thing that is important for you to realize is this is a competition. You are competing against literally thousands of applicants, and your application is going to be subject to peer review. You may have a great idea, but so does every applicant. So does every applicant that applies. So you've got to understand you're competing against other applicants. You may have a great idea, but your great idea is going to be, lumped in with everybody else's great ideas. So you've got to really understand how to write your application, what makes you stand out, and what is going to get you the review that you need. For the National Science Foundation, statistically, they approve 1 out of 10 applications. So, there's a 10% success rate, 90% denial rate. What does an SBIR, application involve? Well, usually it's 2 phases. Phase one is your proof of concept, POC. And it's really very important for you to realize that it needs to be innovative, not evolutionary. You need to have something that is innovative and not basically an evolution of a technology or a science that is already out there. It needs to be significantly different than what may already exist. It needs to have a high degree of risk or failure because you're pushing beyond present technology. It's very, very important. And you're working on a whole new product, technology, or process. Phase ones oftentimes have a very short time frame, 6 months to a year at tops, for you to go ahead and prove your concept. Now, what is not acceptable are system studies, market research, commercial development of an existing product or concept, or evolution of an existing product or application. The key word here is innovative, 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 innovative. And when you write your phase 1 application, you got to use that word. You got to tell them why what you're doing is innovative. Very, very important. So then you go to a phase 2, and I put in there, holy guacamole, I think I got a phase 1. What do I do next? Well, guess what? If you got a phase 1, there's no guarantee that you're going to get a phase 2 award. You've got to apply again, a second time, for phase 2 funding. And phase 2 funding is for the grantee to take the proof of concept phase 1 money and then work on making your product, your research, your technology commercially available. Because just like Lou said, the whole point of an SBIR or an STTR is to end up getting to the point where you have technology that is commercially available. Now, if you're doing the Department of Defense SBIR, usually whatever agency you're applying to is going to be your end use customer. However, you may be required to show that you've got dual use technology, that, whatever you're doing can be used, by the general public. I mean, in phase 2 is how do you build and manufacture, your magic nuclear blaster decoding ring that can make ice and brew coffee, at the same time. You've got to show how you can get your proof of concept in a phase 2 to commercially, available to your clients. And the other thing about phase 2 is you get a lot more money with phase 2. Usually your phase 1 proof of concept, you can get anywhere from 150,000 to up to $750,000. Sometimes it's $1 million. Phase 2, you can get anywhere from 1.5 million up to 2.5 million. And the time period that you have to develop your phase 2 can be a lot longer. It can be anywhere from 1 year to 2 years. The other thing, without getting into the weeds too much, is sometimes there's phase 2Bs, which is an extension of your phase 2. And there's also phase 3, which is unfunded by SBIRs. Phase 3, the whole point of phase 3 is to start selling your product commercially. There are a tremendous amount of online tutorials. If you go to the SBIR.gov website, there are a lot of tutorials that will talk about agency overviews, program basics, data rights, and IB protection. And I really urge, you, if you're going to think about an SBIR or an STTR, to go to this website and to go ahead and go through the tutorials. They're really good. They give you a really good overview. Resources. I have a resource page. One is the SBIR Gov. One is the SBDC advisor, Lou. Myself, I'm a PTAC advisor. Arizona Commerce Authority. Private consultants that will charge for their services. University resources. There are really good university resources at ASU. The University of Arizona Center for Innovation. Glendale College, one of our colleges, has got a resource center. And then the other thing too is sometimes SBIR and STTR winners are more than willing to talk to you about how they won their awards and how they structured their application. See, there should be one slide here, but there isn't, so I guess it got left off. So let me give you a little plug about Arizona PTAC. What we do is we're really very, very similar to SBDC. All of our consulting work is at no cost to our applicants. We are paid for as consultants through a grant through the Defense Logistics Agency. When you become a client of PTAC, you get access to our services at no cost to you, and all of our services are confidential. We cannot talk about what you and I as a client and a consultant talk about unless you give me specific permission to do so. Our website is at azptac.com, and you can go there, ArizonaPTAC.com, and click on the button that says request an appointment, and indicate that you want help with SBIRs, and then you can go ahead and you'll get assigned to me, and we can have an initial call and see how I can help you. That's pretty much what I have. We're going to go into Kyle from the Arizona Commerce Authority. And as a plug for Kyle, I have 2 clients who have both received FAST Grant awards from the Arizona Commerce Authority. So, good organization to work with. I will stop my share here. And if anybody has questions, you can ask them now, or we can wait to the end, whatever works for you. I'm going to be here until we are completely done.
Cool. Thanks, Bob. I do see, before I begin, I do see one question in the chat right now. Will the slides from the presentations today be available for participants, or will the recording be made available for review?
Both. We'll send out the slides, and this will be probably a couple of days. It'll be up on our site.
Yes.
Cool. Perfect. Appreciate it. I will start sharing my screen now and get into my presentation on how the Commerce Authority can be a resource for SBIR. Let me just share my screen. There we go. And perfect. Can you all see my slideshow? Perfect.
Yep.
So as a brief introduction, my name is Kyle Hohmann. I'm an analyst with the Arizona Commerce Authority. I work a lot on our SBIR program and our efforts across the state to grow that. The Arizona Commerce Authority is the recipient of what we call the SBA's FAST Grant. What the FAST Grant is, it stands for Federal State Technology Partnership Program, and it provides funding to organizations across the country to increase the number of SBIR or STTR proposals within that given state or region, leading to an overall increase of the number of awards given. And there's a emphasis on helping particularly disadvantaged businesses, minority owned, et cetera. So trying to grow those numbers, as well as rural outreach as well. So the Arizona Commerce Authority has received the FAST Grant to increase our, to bolster our SBIR efforts across the state, with 3 main sort of prongs attached to that: outreach, technical and business assistance, as well as financial support. Outreach is kind of, what I'm doing now. I am, giving information to small businesses directly on this program and information on how to access it. Technical and business assistance is more about supporting entrepreneurs and startups through programs or services that improve the proposal development, as well as providing assistance that leads to the commercialization of the technology through the program, as well as helping plug individuals into relevant mentoring networks. Financial support is kind of similar to that technical and business assistance side. There's just a dollar sign attached to that as well. So grants or loans to businesses that are looking to pursue SBIR funding to help them with costs associated with getting that proposal in on time, whether it's hiring a grant writer or services to incubator services, et cetera. So that's where the financial support comes in. And those are all pieces of, once again, the FAST Grant that the ACA is administering on behalf of these businesses trying to access SBIR funding for the first time, or second time, or however many. So what this means for you, so we have a lot of resources that, once again, dedicated to helping Arizona applicants with their SBIR efforts across the state. Like Lou said, these slides will be sent out after, which is helpful because there's a lot of helpful links that I've embedded into these slides. We have an ACA SBIR resource center on the ACA's website with links to helpful resources, program overviews, upcoming events, as well as the application portal for the FAST Grant. Let me talk the FAST Grant portal is on that, prong 3, the financial assistance aspect of what the ACA is doing with the FAST Grant. We are offering $3,000 grants to companies looking to pursue SBIR funding, and those funds can be used. Like I said, you go to a grant writer, an incubator services, or access university facilities. All of those, basically, the goal of that grant is to fund those costs associated with getting that application ready for submission. So there's a link to the. It's currently open. We for our first year of the FAST Grant funding, we did 3 rounds of this grant. We are currently in the 3rd and final round of this year's funding, and so that portal application will be open until the end of August 31st, with awardees being notified in September. So if you're interested in applying for an SBIR program, this is a great grant resource for you, because it's specifically about reviewing your proposal and seeing where you are with the application process, and then seeing how this grant can be used to help you submit a successful SBIR application. So once again, if you're interested in the SBIR program and you're planning on applying, I highly recommend you also applying for this grant, because it will help you. $3,000 is $3,000 that you're not having to spend. So it's a great resource for, like I said, those companies looking to get a successful application in. We also have a general SBIR resources page, that I've linked here, and it's an overview of SBIR consultants, programs, facilities, and other resources available for companies that are seeking that SBIR funding. Which is great. It's a great resource of helping companies connect to the right resource for them. Additional resources, incubators and accelerators. You could, if you, for example, successfully submit to our FAST Grant, you can use that $3,000 to join an incubator or an accelerator. Those are great programs with great opportunities to help companies. They can provide them with letters of support, provide numbers on actual costs such as rent, insurance, and consultant fees. They provide that sort of business acumen, as well as access to a mentorship network. So those are always a great way for companies that are sort of new to the startup scene to kind of get plugged in and get a handle on things, so to say. The other aspect is Arizona universities, specifically what is known as the Core Facilities Network. The Core Facilities Network is across ASU, NAU, U of A, the Arizona universities, and it is basically advanced facilities, advanced equipment technology that costs millions of dollars, capital funding to produce, that allows you to not have to go and purchase that equipment yourself. You can purchase time at the Core Facilities Network to access these facilities that can help you sort of go when you're in the middle of the SBIR process, phase 1, phase 2, proof of concept R&D. You can use these facilities for, manufacturing, that sort of thing. That's also a great resource that the FAST Grant can be used to access. I will say, as a benefit to companies that have successfully received SBIR funding, if you are an SBIR recipient and you're looking to access the Arizona Core Facilities, you'll be able to do that at their nonprofit rate. So as if you were a nonprofit, that is the rate you'll be paying as an SBIR recipient. So that's a great opportunity for, like I said, those SBIR recipients at being able to access those facilities at those discount rates. Just an overview of some upcoming events. We'll be promoting the SBIR program and giving some information on specific agencies and programs. June 21st, me and a colleague will be attending the MedTech conference through the Arizona Technology Council. That is up in North Scottsdale. It's a conference for the MedTech industry, and we'll be discussing with a MedTech company, specifically how they've been able to use the SBIR program to commercialize. So it's a great opportunity to hear directly from a company that's gone through the SBIR process before and what they've learned, pros, cons, etc. The other, the next event is on June 30th, also through the Tech Council, but this is a virtual webinar series. It's a SBIR overview of the Department of Energy's program. So we'll have an SBIR director from the DOE's program talking about the program and how companies can specifically apply if they're interested in DOE SBIR topics. So that'll be a great opportunity there. As well as July 7th, there is a manufacturing conference also as partnership with the Arizona Technology Council with the ACA. And that's sort of similar to the MedTech conference, just a different topic. This is more manufacturing, aerospace, and defense technology. That event, that the speaking engagement that the Commerce Authority will be a part of, is a conversation specifically regarding the core facilities network that I talked about, and especially because it's tied to to manufacturing and accessing those high cost manufacturing equipment pieces. How companies can get plugged into the core facilities network and the resources that the universities can provide in that regard. So that is just a brief overview of our upcoming events. I'll just leave you with some contact information. My email is at the top, kyleh@azcommerce.com, as well as my colleague who is our Vice President of Research and Development and kind of oversees our efforts with the SBIR program at the ACA, who I work very closely with. Jill Howard Allen, her email is jillh@azcommerce.com. If you have any questions after this, please feel free to reach out directly. We'd be happy to have any sort of one-on-one consultation with you. If you have any in-depth questions, or if it's just a simple email, just reach out. I'll be happy to answer those questions as well. I see a question, will these events be virtual? I'll just go back, well, if I can. I'll just say that the second one, the DOE event, that one will be virtual. June 30th, Department of Energy SBIR program overview, that will be a virtual event, while the June 21st MedTech conference and July 7th manufacturing conference are in-person conferences.
Terrific. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, so yeah, another plug for the ACA and the FAST grant. How long? I know we've had it in the past. We renewed that grant. It was this year, 2022. Kyle.
Sorry, what was the question though?
So when did we renew that the FAST grant for the ACA?
Like, oh well, it is in the process of being.
Well, the existing one. I'm sorry, the existing grant that you've got now. Would it come online in October of last year, or?
Yeah, around, yes.
Okay.
Year one funding we got approved around October.
Right. So I just wanted to say that, ever since October and the ACA stepping in with the grant, and then Kyle and Jill and everybody else over there, it's really increased the level of activity, at least from my perspective, of SBIR engagement here in Arizona. And, that's going to lead to more, success, of course, and then more dollars coming into Arizona. So I think it's been a terrific program, and I thank you guys for all the work that you do.
Appreciate it, Lou. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to close this with a little section on the. Go ahead, Bob.
We do have one question.
Sorry.
And that was somebody asked, are the SBIR grants for technology innovations only, or can it be for literary works as well? I assume that you mean for, publishing or writing literary works. Is that correct? Yes. So the answer is not that I know of. SBIR grants are usually for technology innovations, but the Department of Education does have SBIR grants that are available, and they are for usually applications that will relate to education. It says, do you need a science degree to participate in the SBIR program? Absolutely not. You don't need any degree to participate in the SBIR program. But one of the things that you will have to do is when you apply for whatever SBIR that you apply for, you're going to have to list who's going to be the principal investigator and who are going to be the other individuals that are going to be involved with your SBIR program. And it would be kind of disingenuous to say that, if you don't have people who have knowledge or have PhDs or are doctors that are involved with your program, it's going to be looked at a little bit. It's not going to be looked at as favorable as if you have sort of those higher level education people. But I've seen SBIRs go out to companies that have individuals who have no college degrees whatsoever, but are really good and very knowledgeable in their technology. It's another question is, if the work has to do with improving mental health but not technology related, the answer is yes. NIH has a lot of SBIR programs that relate to mental health, but not technology. I mean, you got to go look at the specific topic areas that NIH is looking for solutions for. And would PTAC be able to help look at the higher ed research partners? Yes, we can do that. We can help you, locate higher ed research partners. I have very good contacts with University of Arizona through their Center for Innovation, a little bit less so through ASU. And, again, through Gateway Community College, I have good contacts there.
Terrific. Thanks, Bob. No, I appreciate that.
Any other questions? The answer is yes. You can go to, each state has a PTAC office. Actually, some states have several PTAC offices depending upon, the size of the state. Here in Arizona, we have one PTAC office, and if you need contact information for another state, you can email me. And I don't think I put my email up. So what I'm going to do is put it up right now. And I would be happy to, find a PTAC office, in another state for you. And yes, that's correct. I only work with Arizona residents through our PTAC grant. We're only allowed to work with businesses that are resident here in Arizona.
Okay, so what is there anything else? Okay, good. Let me finish up with the commercialization plan, then we could take some more questions at the end. So, we talked a lot about SBIRs, and I think Bob mentioned most SBIR proposal writers are really good on their technology side. And it's because a lot of them come out of a technology area or a research area. But these grants are different than, basic research grants. They are commercialization grants. So the objective is to fund small businesses to be able to fund research that's going to be able to be applied to start to create businesses. And this is, and the term they use is commercialization plan. Another term could be business plan, et cetera. So it's really an important component of the SBIRs, especially in phase twos. Bob told you a little bit more about what phase 2 versus phase 1. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that too. But it's really important, and it's really good to get somebody who's got that background to be able to assist you with this if you haven't done it before. So again, commercialization plan, also known as, each agency may have their own little term for it. There's commercialization strategy, commercial opportunity, potential post application. Bob talked about dual use, right? That's a term that's used because that's basically a way of talking about how the investment can be shared over the commercial sector and potentially, a DoD application. So different kind of terms, but all kind of mean a lot of the same thing. There are different requirements depending on the solicitation, depending on the agency, of what they want to see in their commercialization plan. As Bob said, read it, know it, live it. It's important that you answer the mail with what they're looking for. You need to give them. So what, in a sense, I talked about it being a business plan. It is, gauges the economic potential, and it's really the opportunity for you to describe how you're going to generate revenue from the proposed project. This business model is really, really important. What is that? Um, and it's going to talk about how you convey a plan to generate profits from your innovation. So not just revenue, but how is it going to become profitable? And that's more in the phase 2 side of things, but a good business model will resonate very well in a phase 1. And it starts to look, I mean, if you haven't done a business plan or an investor pitch or anything along those lines, this is what it starts to look like. So there's a lot of reuse. If you've done this before in a business plan or investor pitch or some investment documents, you can reuse a lot of what you already have, and vice versa. If this is where you're starting from, and then you want to generate, you have to go out for investment, or you need to generate a business plan for some reason, you're going to be able to use a lot of your SBIR work for that. So it's very interchangeable, and it's not really wasted effort. Again, the commercialization plan is important because it's there. This is not a classic research grant. This is applied research leading to technology being deployed as a business. And it's very much a shift in a paradigm for research-oriented applicants. And we get a lot of folks from the universities who really haven't spent a lot of time thinking about how to commercialize the things that they're working on, right? And this is new for them, and so it's a shift in mindset. And again, they could many times need a little bit of assistance making that shift. And again, it's a significant weight in the application scoring. So so I'm going to give you some important themes here. I got 5 or 6 things just to kind of throw out to just think about as you write your commercialization plan and as you look at the solicitation and answer their mail. But there's some common things here. So there's a language of entrepreneurship. There's a lingo, and if you can use these words or get somebody to help you inject these words into your commercialization plan, you'll look more like somebody who understands entrepreneurship and starting a new business. Things like incubator, scalability, or traction, cash flow, MVP. So there's different words, and so just use the right words, know the right words, and use the right words. Discovery and validation. These are other words too. These are other things that are important. They're terms, but they mean really, what have you done for discovery that allows you to believe your hypothesis? You're very early here. So your hypothesis is that this is going to be a business, and the business is going to look a certain way. What have you done? What kind of discovery? Who have you talked to? Where are you getting your information from? And that's an important part of an SBIR. I was just reading a solicitation this morning from the NSF on a phase 1. And phase 1 usually is proof of concept, but they said, include any discovery that you've done prior to this proposal. So they're looking pretty early for you to be able to do. I know some people called it market research early on. It's not really what it is, but it's more of uncovering the facts behind your hypothesis. So, and then when you go through discovery, then you start to go through validation, and you start to understand or validate that you have a solution that is actually going to meet a market need, not necessarily work technologically, but meet a market need. Have a team and board of advisors. I think Bob mentioned this before. Who's on your application. I mean, you don't have to be the lead technical person, but you need to have a good team, and you need to have a good board of advisors. And that's so there are different listings. There's people that could be on your particular proposal who are actually going to be paid as part of it. But then there's a section usually to list your board of advisors. Who are the folks that you're reaching out to help supplement your knowledge in this particular area? It's important to have it from a business perspective, and I can tell you why, and probably in another webinar. But the fact that you realize that you do need it, and you've gone through the effort to start to put it together, gives the reviewers a little more confidence that you know how to begin to start the front end of a business. What's your revenue model? And I borrow this from Steve Blank. I don't know if anyone knows Steve Blank, but this is, what's the value? What is the customer paying for? How's the money changing hands? And maybe you have different customer segments. Maybe the revenue model, the business model is different for the different customer segments. Can you talk about that? So you got to think about that. And it's not always that easy. You have to understand a little bit about the industry, but the revenue model, and then any financial projections that go along with it. In the phase 1, you're probably not going to be asked for financial projections. In a phase 2, you're going to be asked for a 5-year pro forma. So not only you have to have your revenue model nailed, you're going to have to do some projections on not only your revenue but your pro forma, which pro forma meaning your P&L statement, which is your profit and loss. Your cost of goods, and then all your expenses and your profit. So that becomes really, really important. Market size, and this is one of the first things as a reviewer I would look for is, are you playing in a big market? What's the potential in the market? Is it a niche small market? Is it a large growing market? And that makes a difference, because they, part of you starting a business, you want to generate a large business and a large opportunity to have significant impact. So the larger the market, the better off you are. And this needs to be also validated with third-party market research. So a lot of folks will do a bottoms up, which you just kind of count the noses, and that's an interesting way to do a market forecast. And it works sometimes, but you also need to do a top down. A top down is usually third-party market research that's validated from a known market research company. And we have IBIS World, and a lot of my SBIR clients use that IBIS World, the reports. If we can find one that matches some of the information there in their SBIRs, and they're no fee reports, and these reports are about they're about $1,000 a piece if you bought them. Know your competition. The worst thing you can do is say there's no competition, because there's always competition. How are people solving the problem today? That could be your competition. And knowing that there's competition means you've done some homework. It also validates the space a little bit, right? So if nobody's doing it, what's the odds that you're really the first one to be there? So knowing your competition, be able to list them out. You don't have to do a lot of cut and paste here. This doesn't have to be a huge section, but some general knowledge of who your competition is, and maybe even some of the features. A comparison is really important. So I think one of the things I think that I need to bring out, and I think Bob may have mentioned it, is additional funding, right? So typically these agencies do not want to be the sole funder of your business, right? And I'll tell you, in the NSF for sure, I mean, they want to know how you're going to raise additional funds to make this to commercialize this, to make this a business. Usually in a phase 2, you're getting into a prototype, but there's a lot of other money and resources and activity it needs to actually make it a business. So there's typically a need for raising private capital, and that actually is a good validator of the SBIR. If the SBIR company was good and we picked the right person to fund, and they're able to raise private equity to go along with it, that usually is a recipe for success. And so angel investors and venture capitalists, knowing the difference between an angel investor and venture capitalist. If you come in and say, I need, after my SBIR, I'm going to get a $20 million raise from a venture capital firm. Typically not. There's some steps there. Maybe you need a $500,000 raise from an angel investor. And who are the angel investors in your area that might be interested? Have you had any contact with them? Do you know who they are? Can you list them? I mean, this is stuff that helps validate that that you're going to need private investment to be able to follow through. Phase 1 commercialization plans. Okay, so here's some of the lengths for phase 1s. DoD, commercialization strategy, 1 page. DOE's got one for 2 pages. NSF, it's 2 to 4 pages. NASA, it's not necessarily mentioned, but here are the length isn't, but here are the different names for the phase 1 commercialization sections in the SBIR. So they're a little bit different. I think I alluded to that in one of the initial slides. And I'm going to talk about the phase 2 in a commercialization plan for, let's say, the NSF, which is where I have a lot of experience. It's 15 pages, not to exceed 15 pages, but you got to do a market section. You got to talk about the company and the team. The company, if it exists, is it an existing company? Is it a new company? How was it founded? Who is your team, and why is your team the right team? That whole validation, product, technology, competition, very customer-centric section. And then finally, a finance and revenue model section, which is a pro forma for 5 years. It's usually 2 years of the phase 2, because during the phase 2, they're usually 2 years or so, and then 3 years post phase 2, which is your commercial opportunity. So I think we talked about resources already. Bob, you did a good job here. There's lots of, and the thing is, and I'll just say, there's lots of resources here in the state. There are no fee. Bob, myself, the folks at ACA, but there's other resources too. And the $3,000 for the FAST grant to help get a proposal writer to help you with it. That's money well spent. Even if you don't get the FAST grant, it could be money well spent. So there are folks here in Arizona that have the knowledge to be able to help you. So got to do a little, it's not all in one place. You may have to do a little bit of digging, but you certainly can find the help you need. So any more questions? No. Let's see.
So I do have one question.
Go for it.
From David. David said, does PTAC work with a business that's registered in Hawaii and also registered in Arizona as a foreign entity? And the answer is, you've got to have a physical location in Arizona for us to work with you. You've got to have an address and be registered in the system for award management with an Arizona address. And that's just, the terms of our grant through the Defense Logistics Agency. I mean, we didn't make up the rule, they made up the rule. So you've got to have a physical location here in Arizona for us to work with you.
Let's see. Anything else? If nothing else, again, I want to thank everybody for being on. Bob and Kyle, thanks so much. I thought this went really well. Guys, any closing, any last words you want to say?
I'm just typing out a quick message.
While Bob's doing that, I'll just once again thank you all for being here and remind you that the ACA is here as a resource for you guys. And once again, if you have any questions, please just shoot me an email. I'd be happy to have a more in-depth conversation if that is would be helpful to you guys. So thank you.
And I think, Eileen, you're going to send out an evaluation through email.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so please, please evaluate us. Let us know how we did and how we can make it better. And okay, Bob, so go ahead and get registered. Okay, you're good.
I think I'm good. I don't see anything else. My only admonishment is, if you're going to do an SBIR, start early.
Yeah.
It's going to involve a lot of work. It's not the easiest process in the world, but I can help you get through without pulling out too much of your hair.
Terrific. All right, guys. Well, everybody take care and have a good rest of your day.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
take care, guys. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.